Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Florida Sound Archive podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Kaiser. And for today's interview, I have on with me a man who's been in a long list of bands. I tried to count them all, but then I lost where I was counting. It was just too many to count. Jeremy Rogers is here, and he is going to talk a lot about his life and a lot of the bands he's played with and his music and his journey. Jeremy, welcome in. How are you?
Thanks, Jeff. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So we have a lot to get to, a lot of different stories and situations you've been in over the years. So we'd love to go ahead and get started. So let's kick it off with kind of talking about your early beginnings. You're from Florida originally, is that right?
I am not from Florida
You're
originally.
not from Florida.
I was born in Erie, Pennsylvania. Um, Luckily, my folks moved to Gainesville just a few short years after that. So ended up in Gainesville in '78. Um, and I'm very thankful, eternally grateful to my parents for moving out of Pennsylvania because it's not my scene. I'm definitely a Florida boy, and I guess I can claim that since I've been here for about 45 years.
Yes, I would say you're a Floridian at this point. So when you came to Florida, you said northern Florida, right? The Gainesville area, that's where you first landed.
Correct. Yeah. There until '83 when we moved to St. Augustine. Um, St. Augustine's my home. I did end up back in Gainesville in the mid '90s to go to school. I was in Gainesville from '94 to 2000, which was a great time to be there, especially if we're talking about music. Um, and then ended up back in St. Augustine from 2000 on.
What was that like when you first got to the Gainesville area and you were able to start experiencing some of the bands, right? So who were some of those bands you first learned about when you got to Gainesville?
Well, the Gainesville thing kind of happened before I got to Gainesville. Probably
Okay.
my junior and senior year of high school when I was lucky enough to run across some really good records from Gainesville through Fuse Records, a record store we had in St. Augustine at the time. Um, I was already into punk rock, um, having had a metal phase before that. Um, and so I was, you know, this was 92, 93, buying like No Effects records and, finding Operation Ivy and those sorts of things. And I think maybe the third time I came into the store to buy another No Effects 7-inch, Jay at the counter was like, hey, why don't you check out this? And he slid across the counter the self-titled Radon 7-inch, which at that point, like, absolutely blew my mind, um, and was the sole reason I moved to Gainesville to go to school. I got there in the summer of '94, and Radon wasn't playing. They were on one of their many breakup slash hiatuses. But when I got to town, um, I used to go see Fried Christ a lot, Section 8, Van Ass, that era of bands. Tired from Now On. One of my best buddies, Major, was the singer in that band. Also, Matt Sweeting played um, guitar in that band. They were huge for me. They were like the first like truly heavy and weird band that I got into. Everything else before that was pretty standard fare, 3/4 chord rock and roll, punk, metal, whatever it was. But Tired from Now On was like opened another door into the like ultimate heaviness. And Yeah, so it was a great time. The hardback was happening. Um, there was the Covered Dish, which was another venue in town, which is now the High Dive. It's been a bunch of stuff in between, which had more of like the indie rock fair. You could go see Superchunk there when they came through town, Archers of Loaf, and that's that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, Good time to be in town for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I want to go back to your early memories of Radon because you
Mhm.
said by the time you moved up, they were already not, they weren't playing anymore, right?
They weren't playing anymore. No. Um,
So, so what was it about Radon that, because, there were a lot of bands, right, that were from the area. What was it about
mhm.
Radon that really connected with you?
I that self-titled 7 inch is just pure gold. I don't know if there's another 4 song collection that's any stronger than that, uh, especially from the time period. Um, Also, there were 2 vocalists. Uh, Brett and Dave both handled songs differently, approached them differently. Uh, their sense of uh, song structure was different, but with Bill back there, just like being Bill, it all sounded like one band. Yeah, I don't know. The recordings weren't great, um, and I loved how like especially on the live record in the liner notes, it was like turn the bass all the way down, turn the treble all the way up, and turn the volume all the way up. Like should be this like sheer, like icy loudness. Nothing but like high guitar tone and cymbal wash. But for some reason, it works.
You mentioned about the first 7 inch that you put out that
Mm-hmm.
with Radon on it. And that was one of the first times that one of your bands was also on that same 7 inch, I'm right.
Yes, correct.
So what are your memories of I'm, and talk about also putting out that first 7 inch?
I'm was my high school, my first punk band. Um, Started in '93 with just some high school friends. Um, Pretty terrible, but you got to start somewhere. Um, but yeah, we played for a couple years. We were playing shows even when I moved to Gainesville. Um, but when I moved to Gainesville, I started writing for a fanzine, and the guy that I was doing the fanzine with had the idea to put a record with the fanzine. Those two things ended up being two separate things. So the 7 inch is a corporate giant compilation. It's just a name we made up on the fly. Um, and yeah, so I begged Dave for a Radon song, and he blessed us with one. We had a Lexington song on there, and then one of my bands, my band I'm had a song on there called Lost in Hastings, and yeah, there were 500 of those, and I have one for you. Um,
I appreciate that.
and it's kind of fascinating to see to I heard hear from you that you actually had been looking for that record because
Yeah, you don't see it. You don't come across it a whole lot. And sometimes if you do, there are a few other people looking for it and they grab it and that's just what happens. But
yeah.
you remember the first I'm show that you played?
It was probably just a house party in St. Augustine. Um, we did end up playing at Fuse Records quite a bit. Those were our first sort of like DIY shows where it wasn't like just like a house party. Um, and then yeah, we played there, and then we started playing in Daytona with a band that we met um, at Fuse called Hope Springs Eternal. That's when I met Ryan Murphy, whom I then played in a couple of bands more recently with. And we've been friends since then. I think we were 16 when we met. So we would play in Daytona with them. Um, let's see. And then they would come up and play some shows in St. Augustine with us. Then we started moving over to Gainesville and playing. And we played at the Hardback a couple times when I was in high school.
What were some of those crowds like in Daytona, considering that's kind of like a vacation spot? So what was that like?
Oh, super weird. Daytona is always it's a crapshoot, like because it's the majority, like the strip where the bars and clubs are is you're right. It's just vacation hell, uh, you know. And sometimes it's motorcycle hell. Um, so yeah, they weren't great. I don't think. Um, yeah, I didn't know what great crowds were until I was an older gentleman. I think I there weren't a whole lot of like great shows. We were just happy to play in front of
Sure.
a couple of our buddies and the other bands.
So, there were probably a lot of crossover with other bands you were also in, maybe around that same time, right? So, when you think about that early period, what are we talking? Is this like the early 90s, mid 90s at this point?
The I'm thing was 90, I'd say 93 to 95. But then there was a period from 95 to uh, till 2000, till I moved back to St. Augustine, that I wasn't playing music. I could not put a band together in Gainesville to save my life. I did have a band that's not really, that we played some shows, but nothing ever really connected. We recorded a couple of demos. They just didn't work. It was, playing music with my buddies, my best friend, Ryan Badger, who played bass in I'm, we lived together in Gainesville, and we were, as a me playing guitar, him playing bass, trying to come up with a drummer and a singer, trying to figure out stuff, but we really never could make it work. um and so yeah, it wasn't until I moved back to St. Augustine in 2000 that I got the offer to join Boredom, and that's when I started, like, it was like a whole nother thing. That band had been around for a while, had records out, went on tour, people came out, people were, like, it was completely foreign, but actually kind of nice. Like, it's like, oh, playing in front of like 100 people, that's fun. That's a lot more fun than playing in front of five.
What do you think it was about the music of Boredom that really got people really energized about that band?
They were really funny dudes. They still are really funny dudes. And uh, they, good looking young surfer punks. And they, from the very start, could write catchy tunes. And they just got better as time went on. When I joined the band, Gibb, who was the singer, had started playing guitar, started playing second guitar. And at that point, that's when I joined. They were writing, I think, what were great songs. The demo that they gave me to learn, for like my first practice, I was not expecting the quality of songs. I was blown away, and it was like, it made my decision really easy. Like, I always liked the band. They're really good friends of mine. We went to high school together, surfed together. But when I heard those songs, I was like, yeah, I can play in that band.
Did you have to audition, or was it just like, hey, we know
No,
you, you're in?
I ran into Tony Lippy, the drummer, who was also the drummer in I'm. Um, I think it was maybe like my first day back in St. Augustine. Um, at his restaurant, he was waiting tables, and he came over and he's like, "Hey, our bass player just quit. You want to play bass?" And I was like, "Sure." That was it. And then they gave me the songs, and that they had just recorded. They recorded 4 songs with Rob McGregor in Gainesville, which I thought was cool, um, because I know Rob, I know his whole deal, and he always gets a good quality product comes out of his studio, and he's just a sweetheart. But yeah, that was it. There's no audition. We've known each,
Yeah.
Tony and I grew up on like less than a block away from each other. I used to skateboard over to his house with like my guitar and practice amp, in middle school, to like play Metallica covers. So it was an easy one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned Rob McGregor, and he recorded a lot of Florida bands, of course. So,
Yes.
you have any good stories of working with him, or anything in the studio that really is a standout memory for you?
My second recording experience of my whole life was with Rob at the original Turd Studios on Main Street, in the attic of that house there. So yeah, it was really fun. He had an 8-track at the time, and I was like, wow, we can have 8 microphones on stuff. This is great. But Rob's always been great. I was a fan of Rob as a musician before I even really realized that he was an audio engineer. His band Grain was one of the bands that was happening in Gainesville when I moved there, and they were just like the loudest bar band you could ever hear, I'd ever experienced. And Rob just is such a shredder. And so I've been recording with him since '93, and I literally, my partner Tess and I were at his studio last month. Anytime we have a project or need some songs demoed, we just call him up and cruise over there. It's just like a really, really easy studio. Rob's a sweetheart, and yeah, I mean, he's worked on some great records for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So interesting. And with Boredom, did you get a chance to play any gigs with that band outside of Florida?
Yes. Yeah, there were a couple short tours up the East Coast. Some shows with Guttermouth and Bigwig. And then yeah, the sad bastard story of the end of Boredom is that we just recorded the record that I played on, called Squat Thrust Captain, and we got offered a week tour with Yellow Card in California. They had just moved out there and started blowing up, but I don't think they were on a major label yet. I think they were still working with Lobster Records. So yeah, we were on our way out to play those shows, and I broke my thumb skateboarding in the desert in Texas, in this basically stormwater retention ditch. It looked like a skate park. I couldn't not skate it, and I broke my thumb.
Why couldn't you? Hold on. Why couldn't you not? Like you just
it just looked like this was pre. I guess this was pre Tony Hawk Pro Skater, but it looked like something out of Tony Hawk Pro Skater. It looked like a skate park in the middle of the desert. It was this really idyllic thing, like a gas station in the middle of the desert, just absolutely beautiful scenery. And there's nothing but this gas station, and right next to it is this storm drain thing, and it looked too much fun, and it was too much fun. So anyways, the band breaks up right then, just completely implodes. We don't do the shows. Tom, our guitar player, had flown out for some reason, and so we called him and we're like, hey, yeah, I'm in the emergency room. They say I can't play. We're turning back around and going home. And he's like, but I'm already here. Yeah, it was a bummer. So that band just ended like that, the screeching halt.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were there any hard feelings about that situation?
Yeah, there were. All that's past now, but
good.
I still get shit for being the guy who breaks up bands, for sure.
So Boredom implodes, and so that was the only record you made with Boredom.
Yes, yeah. And the funny thing about that, in the lead up to this interview, combing through my archives and looking for album cover artwork and whatever, I stumbled upon the Squat Thrust Captain CD, right? And on Discogs, it's going for $75 for a CD. I'm pretty sure we threw out 1,000 CDs at some point.
Yeah.
Because they were just I know they're in my attic for a really long time. I don't know if anybody else has any more of them, but yeah, Boredom members, if you have CDs, they're worth a pretty penny.
To your knowledge, was there anything that ever came around of anyone ever approaching members of the band about reissuing some of the catalog?
Well, I think my first communication with Drew Williams at Ashtray Monument, I believe it was regarding the Boredom catalog. It was before Ashtray was actually like releasing physical material, and they were just sort of cataloging older Florida bands that weren't on the streaming services. Um, at that point, I reached out to the members of Boredom, and I have over the last couple of years a couple times, and I have never gotten a unanimous yes. There's always been a holdout, and no, I don't pry. It's not. I don't particularly have a dog in the fight. Um, if they want them on the streaming services or want to press them onto vinyl or something, it would be very easy. I'm sure that there would be multiple people that would be interested. Um, if anybody's interested and you're jonesing for it, boredomstuff.com still exists. I have no idea how. Somebody is paying for it because it's like been over 10 years that thing has been in existence, and you can download every record.
Yep.
All of them from there. So, and for free. There's nothing else. But I think, other than maybe a couple songs on YouTube, that's the extent of our online life as a band.
Well, at least there's that,
Yeah,
and
it's there.
it's there,
Yeah.
and you never know what could happen. Obviously, things can evolve and change as time goes on. You mentioned Ashtray Monument, and in the early periods, let's talk about that label because they had put out a lot of the records, a lot of the music that you've been a part of over the last few years and what have you. So, talk about your relationship with them and some of the bands that you've been a part of that are on that label.
Yeah. So I feel that my musical life was like renewed when I started working with Ashtray Monument. Before that, I'd like never really worked with a label before. I'd been in bands that toured and put our own records out, and we did the DIY thing. Ashtray Monument is still very DIY. It's literally like three guys. But as soon as Drew expressed interest in working, at the time, the first thing was was Curious Markings, a band that lasted for about a year. It was so awesome to have a person, Drew particularly. He's our contact with the label, but have someone who was completely capable and on it help out with what labels do. Like I never had that before. Never had like a partner like that in being in bands and making music. And so yeah, Drew fucking rules. And I don't think that I'd be in a place right now where I play in multiple bands really comfortably. Like everything would be different if I didn't meet up with those guys. So I'm eternally grateful. But yeah, they put out the Start with the Party EP for Curious Markings. It was a 10-inch. And yeah, then he's put out the Minimum Rage discography LP, and then done a bunch of digital releases, a bunch of streaming for other bands,
Right.
older bands in my catalog that weren't on the streaming services, which is really awesome. I was impressed when they started the label and they were just like, yeah, we want to get those old like 90s and early 2000s Florida bands that have great records, have material, but aren't part of the Spotify, Apple Music world. We want to get them there. And I thought that was awesome. Like no one's going to make any money off of the streaming services, but it is really, really convenient and awesome to have access to records that you would have to dust off a 7-inch, you know, put on the turntable,
Yep.
you know, do the whole thing, which, you know, is an art itself, and it is something very enjoyable. I still do that, but like for most people to have access to that kind of stuff, just
Yeah,
on your phone is awesome.
it gives it some portability to take it along with you.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to jam some of those songs when you're at the gym or something like that, you know, you can't take the 7-inch with you, obviously. So it's nice to be able to do that. And you know, I want to go back to Curious Markings for a minute, because that was also one of the bands that you did a lot of the artwork for, right? The album art.
Yeah. At that time, at the time that band existed, I was a painter for a living, or I was attempting to make art for a living, and kind of ran with it. I was in a good place where I could kind of take some chances with my finances, and yeah, and in that 5 years or so is when Curious Markings happened, and I was painting. I was basically doing a painting exercise, basically aping Pusshead, but painting my friends, you know, with skull faces and really fucked up teeth. And I just ended up. I painted my son. I painted my mom. I painted my buddy Jason from Dredger, another band I play in. And I ended up painting myself. I painted myself. I painted and the other people in the band. And when it came time for artwork, we were like, well, why don't we just use this? And actually,
Yeah.
that might have been a Drew suggestion. Drew from Astray might have suggested that. And yeah, we used the painting of Jacob, with the fiery orange mullet, as the cover, and then all the other paintings are real small in the on the insert. But yeah, that's awesome. Also, I think more so than the painting, I designed the logo for that band, which I thought was really hilarious because it kind of just looks like a death metal logo.
It does.
It's like super spiky, but
Yeah.
it's like it's legible. It's definitely not as illegible as like it's supposed to be. But you know, we were like a pop punk band, you know.
Sure. But
So
I like it. I like the play on the
I thought it was
style.
fun.
Yeah.
I thought it was fun. We had a good time. That was a really fun band. Jacob Hamilton played guitar and sang. Teresa Rose, my partner, played bass and sang. Wesley Durden played drums. It was a good time.
Is there a certain flyer in your catalog of bands you've been in that is one of your all-time favorites?
Shit. Well, I'm lucky to be in a band right now with Mike Taylor, who makes incredible art. And for our band, Terror Management Band, he screen prints like these fucking beautiful pieces for every show. So I would say, yeah, any of the last like year and a half's worth of shows, including we did a Sing Out Loud set, not last weekend, the weekend before, and he made just a bonkers flyer, or not a flyer. It's a full poster. Yeah, anything that he's done, I would say, not one specifically. Although there is one he did for the Asshole Parade 20th anniversary weekend, which was a good 10 years ago.
Is that the one that Minimum Rage played on?
No, Dredger played that
Oh,
one.
Dredger played that one.
Yeah, and that's a really cool one, and it's nice to see like our name up on the list of bands with, like, you know, Shitstorm and Asshole Parade, Mouser, and all those bands. Yeah, Mike Taylor, thanks, buddy.
I was gonna ask too, isn't there a connection with Asshole Parade with some of the as members or crossover with other bands?
Yeah. So I played drums in a band called Dredger. Dredger's been around for 10 years now. And we've had, I think, 5 guitar players, and our newest guitar player, who's not even new anymore, he's been in the band for over a year, is Travis Johnson, who played bass in Asshole Parade for a very long time. So yeah, Travis plays guitar for us now. We went to high school together, middle school and high school together. We've known each other for years. Great dude, great guitar player. Stoked to have him.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of that band, Asshole Parade. They're a good band,
Yeah,
and
Travis, both Travises, Johnson and Ginn, in that from that band, were really instrumental in my punk rock, early days. Um, Ginn was a couple of years older, or still is a couple of years older than me. And he had like puss head drawings on his backpack, and his like rad skater kid. He had like Tony Hawk haircut. Probably doesn't want anybody to know that. We were the same bus. He hooked me up with like a couple of mixtapes. One with like Anthrax on one side and MDC on the other. But yeah, very instrumental in, like, I think he maybe gave me a couple issues of Thrasher at one point. That was sort of like, I was just like blonde haired,
sure.
like surfer boy, and he kind of hit, like, those things, like he pushed me in the right direction. And then our bands played together quite a bit over the years. He was in Fried Christ when I was in IME, and then shortly after Asshole Parade happened. And I've gotten a chance to play with them over the years quite a bit.
One of my personal favorite mixtapes, really a compilation CD that had a lot of those bands on it, that really introduced me to a lot of music that was going on in the 403, was 403 Chaos.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So
Shout out
there,
to Hankshaw. The probably the like sore thumb on that record, but like Hankshaw is one of my top 10 bands of all time. And I was like, I heard them and not knowing that they were part of that scene, that they came out of like the 403 Chaos thing. I knew what that was. I knew all those other bands. When I heard them play, I was just like, this is brilliant. And then afterwards, learning that they did, like, some of those guys played in Scrotum Grinder. Like, it was like, it made me love them even more
yeah.
for making that kind of music in that like, at that time, at that place. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, Brian Roberts. He was on the podcast, I think in the first year
Oh,
of the
nice.
of the podcast. And that was important for me too, because you mentioned that Hankshaw was kind of like the sore thumb. Like I mean, they were one of my favorite bands of that period, but they stood out, of course, because they didn't
Right.
sound and they sounded nothing like any of the other bands on that
No.
compilation, but there was something about them that was different, and I thought for
Oh
good
my god.
reasons.
Yeah, Harold's voice is awesome. Yeah, those guys are just amazing. The looking back on it now with like with more knowledge about songcraft um and being a little bit better, being a better musician than I was when I was probably 18 when I heard them for the first time. It's amazing that they were writing those songs at that time. Like, they were light years ahead of anybody in just, they're straight pop songs, but they're brilliant. Like, the structure and just the playing. I mean, they were an incredible band. Incredible. I
Did you
hope
ever get?
I want them to reunite really badly.
I know we talked about it on the episode, and did you ever get a chance to see them live back in the
Yeah,
day?
I saw them multiple times. Um, I think all 3 times in Gainesville, like with them and like Get Up Kids once, and then them and Hot Water and Culture another time. Um, yeah, and then there's a third show I'm blanking on, but yeah, I saw them. I never saw them in Tampa or anything. It was always in Gainesville.
Yeah. And because you were around, in the early years, getting a chance to, see a band like Hot Water Music, what are your memories of Hot Water Music and getting a chance to see them back in the early years?
Um, I we I'm almost positive that the four of those guys and myself, we all moved to Gainesville the same time frame, summer of '94. Um, yeah, I don't. I think I saw one of their early. I saw one of their earlier shows, probably not the first, um, but I bought the demo tape from them at the hardback. I don't have it anymore, but I have a lot of the vinyl from those days. Yeah, I thought they were really great and like chaotic energy, right? Like, and then it was exhausting watching them because there was just they were like exploding in real time, like right in front of you. I
Yeah.
miss seeing them with Chris with Wallard playing guitar and singing. Um,
The another band that was also quite big from Gainesville, it still is to this day, is Less Than Jake. So, did you ever get a chance to see them back in the early time, or any chance to
yeah,
play any shows with them?
I saw them a lot because they were really happening when I first moved to town. They were super fun. Um, I'm played with Less Than Jake in Jacksonville at the Milk Bar on one of these uh, sort of all day festival sort of things. You know, show starts at noon until there's like 12 bands or whatever. So we didn't technically play a show with them. We played a show that they were also on. Yeah, that was at the Milk Bar in Jacksonville called Punk Fu, and there was it was like a series. Um, but then yeah, saw them a bunch. They just played so much. They were it was obvious they really wanted it. I thought it was awesome. Like, um, I did see them not recently, but maybe I'm gonna say 7 or 8 years ago. Um, they were on tour with Pepper, and they came through the St. Augustine Amphitheater. I would happen to be working there at the time, and I was the merchandise coordinator there. And I hadn't seen Jake in a really long time, and I thought like I wonder how this is gonna go. They're playing on this like massive stage. It's like a 4,400 seat outside amphitheater. They killed it. Like their energy like translates whether they're playing a small club or like a massive arena. They just bring it. Like it was ultra fun. Like the crowd ate it up with a fucking spoon. Like it was great. I was really I mean obviously like they've had success for decades now, but it was really nice to see a band that I only knew as like a small punk club band play in front of like 4,000 people and like not miss a step. Also,
Right.
they're like they do a show, right? There's like toilet paper cannons and confetti and like like it's not just like a ska punk band. There's like people in big bobbleheads. There's costumes. And, they're wild.
And you mentioned the Milk Bar in Jacksonville, and
Mm-hmm.
Jacksonville is one of those cities in Florida that has really evolved a lot over the years. I feel like the especially the music scene in Jacksonville. So back in that time period, what was it like playing up in Jacksonville and playing some of those shows at the Milk Bar?
Oh, it was great. It was. I was a child. I was like I started playing at the Milk Bar when I was like 17 years old, and having never had like basically like lying to my parents, telling them I was at somebody else's house, sleeping over so I could go play the show in Jacksonville because I straight up was not allowed to leave St. Augustine at that time. But like, yeah, we developed a relationship with a promoter that booked at the Milk Bar, and I think like the Moto Lounge down the street, maybe one other place. His name is Jason Lewis. We're still uh, friendly. I talk to him online occasionally. Great dude. Took a chance on us when we were like honestly horrible, but he started booking us on shows, and I think I would imagine the fact that we showed up on time, ready to play, always pretty thankful for having the opportunity that he kept having us back. But yeah, he put us on some cool shows. Like we opened for that band Wax, that had like the video of the guy running down the street
On
in slow motion
fire.
on fire. Right?
Yeah.
It was a Spike Jones video. So like when that record came out and they were touring for that, we got to open for them at the Milk Bar, like on the big stage. Yeah, when you're 17, it was radical. Like, because it was like a legit club, like there were bouncers and door guys who were kind of scary. That was exciting. you know Promoter brings you into like a weird back office to throw you like three $10 bills at the end of the night. But like, yeah, it was cool. That place was pretty legendary. I saw many shows in the Lagwagon, strung out, no effects vein there. But I saw Fugazi there, Butthole Surfers there, all kinds of shows. Yeah, it was a great spot. It was downtown, and Jacksonville downtown basically at that point, and maybe it still does, just like was a ghost town. It just shut down. There weren't restaurants open or anything else. There was like the Greyhound station that was like super sketchy, like a half a block away, and then
right.
So it was, but also that's when you're 17 and like running around the downtown Jacksonville with your friends at like 2 o'clock in the morning, skateboarding and like freaking out because you just played a show in front of like 25 people. It was really cool.
And you mentioned, your parents didn't know. You were telling them you were sleeping at a friend's house. So
Yeah.
at what point did your parents catch on to what you were doing? And did they support the fact that you were really involved in a lot of the music that you were doing?
To a point, yeah. So yeah, my whole music, my love of music comes from my parents. My parents were voracious music like people. They went to concerts constantly. They bought a lot of records. They supported their friends who were local musicians. Like they were at they were supporters, but they were also very, very like hyper focused, like helicopter parents. To a degree where there were like nope, you don't, that is a line you don't cross, right? You're not going to Jacksonville. So I basically I knew my relationship with them, and I was like, okay, well that's just a no, so I'm going to work my way around it. I don't think I ever got busted for those lies. Definitely others. But like they were so supportive in Gainesville that, I mean, like my parents came to the Hardback, like the dingiest hole in the wall in Gainesville, to see my band play, and like sat there and loved it. Like
Which band was this that they saw?
that would have been I'm.
I'm.
They would, yeah, they would, that would probably would have not. And it was like, yeah, it was probably a bill with like, Fried Christ, which I'm sure my mom like absolutely loved, right? Uh, but yeah, they were at that point they were very supportive. At that point, I was out of the house and like, was living my life, but they were still supportive. It was great. They still come to my shows to this day. My dad's really deaf though, so he has no idea what I sound like.
What do you remember the first concert your parents took you to?
Oh, I have no memory of the first one because we were at them all the time. Yeah, I remember like the first concert that my brother and I wanted to go see, that was like that we could talk my dad into taking us, was Tesla. This would have been like 90 or 91, early high school. And yeah, he took us to like the arena in Jacksonville. Took us also see like around that time we went with him to see, like, we saw the Black Crowes, we saw Lenny Kravitz. Yeah, I love like punk music. I love hardcore. I love DIY, anything. But I also grew up watching MTV and listening to the radio, and so like
Yeah.
I have there isn't a line. There's not like a punk line, and if there is, I'm not afraid to cross it. Like I don't. If it's a good song, it's a good song. I straight up don't care. And I think most people are like that now.
Sure.
But we grew up when we were kids. It was just like, well, hear the word sellout a lot, and like there were certain bands you didn't listen to. But yeah, now it's all there.
Everything is like
Yeah.
just yeah, I think those lines are so have been completely erased, I feel like, to some degree.
Yeah.
So uh one of the other bands you were in, which kind of you mentioned about, that period like MTV and stuff, and like I would think about like the 90s, and another band you were in that I think you are still currently in, called Harsh Bangs, right? Is that's a current band of yours.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of the Harsh Bangs music, it's kind of like you stumbled upon this 90s alternative album that you never heard of before,
Yeah.
and you're like, well, this sounds like it came out at that time. At least through my ears it does. And
Yeah.
it is different than a lot of the other music that you've played on in all your different bands you've been with. So talk about Harsh Bangs and that part of what you're into as well.
Cool. Yeah. Harsh Bangs is myself and Cole Hellman. Cole is the guitar player in Minimum Rage. And at the time of the recording of the first EP, he was also my roommate. Um, we recorded that first EP the first week of the pandemic shutdown. So March of 2020. Um, the reason we did was Cole was packed to move out and move to Colorado, but then the pandemic hit and he put the brakes on. Was like, I'm gonna stick around for a little bit until this kind of calms down. Well, all of his music gear was in the living room, and so he's like, well, we're stuck here. Like, my son was in quarantine because he was in his mom. He and his mom were in Spain during the initial quarantine. So like he was basically quarantined at his mom's house for like a month, and it was just Cole and I. So we set up a studio, and he's like, "Let's demo a song." So set the drums up in the bedroom, you know, just did the thing. I just picked a song that I had, and it turned out really good. And we're like, "Yeah." He's like, "This sounds like, like a good like 90s power pop song." And I'm like, "Well, let's just do another 90s song." And so we did that. We literally picked a band and said, "Okay, we're gonna do a Posies song." Okay, we did the Posey song. Let's do a Heat Miser song. Okay, cool. Well, let's do a Nirvana song. And then we had 4 songs, and we're like, okay. Showed them to Drew at Ashtray Monument, and he was like, "Yep, let's do it." So we did a. I'm like, "Well, it's not a band. We can't be a band, even if we wanted to right now because of the pandemic." He's like, "Yeah, we'll just put it up and do a pre-order, and we'll lathe cut that many records." Okay, cool. So we did it. I think there's maybe 50 of them, which is great. It's all of our buddies. We have a very supportive group of friends. And the second one is supposed to be out October 5th. So we'll see. We actually pressed this one. It's a small pressing, but we should have some copies relatively soon. Pretty
Nice.
stoked. Yeah. So that project is just Cole and I. We share the writing and the and all the playing. We are playing our first show as a band at Monufest 3 this year in Newport Richey. And Joe Gardella from Home Is Where is going to be playing drums with us, or is playing drums with us. And Teresa Rose from Curious Markings is playing bass. And so the 3 of us have been practicing for the last couple months, getting a group of songs together. And when Cole gets here in October, mid-October, we'll have a couple days to practice and feel it out. But Cole is one of the more amazing musicians I've ever had the good luck to play with, and so I have no question that he'll just turn his amp up really loud and shred. That's just what he does.
And I wanted to ask, because it's really just the two of you,
Mm-hmm.
would you feel like Harsh Bangs has been the most demanding on how much you're playing musically?
No, almost the opposite. Uh, I I love being in bands. I've always loved being in bands. I'm constantly forming bands in my head. Like, no matter any song I hear, I think my mind automatically goes, which one of my which what who in my friend group could I make that sort of noise with constantly? Like it doesn't matter what song. And so with a thing like Harsh Bangs, where like I write a good majority of the songs and I play all of the instruments other than the lead guitar stuff, it's awesome for me because like I don't have to like I can just kind of take care of everything. And not that I'm a shredder in any sort of way, but I'm pretty like competent at the three things that you need to play to make rock and roll music. I can play drums pretty well. I can play bass. I can play guitar. And I could like, and it's easy for me to think on those three levels when I'm writing or recording. So most of the time, the drum part, I just have to play it. I don't have to write it or think about it. I just have to.
Are you all self-taught? Is that how you learn how to play all these instruments, or did you learn from someone? Did you ever go and take any classes or get anyone teach you?
I started playing guitar in middle school, and I took 2 years of guitar lessons with Florida folk legend Bob Patterson. He was one of my dad's good friends, and he lined up lessons with for me with Bob. Bob taught me all the basics and did a phenomenal job. Like his lessons still stick with me. I still think about the things that he taught me almost every time I pick up a guitar. But that was like super basic. And then I took classical guitar in high school. I played in an ensemble and in a quartet. I did that for 3 years. But that was even farther away from rock and roll. Like I started in like with this folk dude who is he finger picks a 12-string guitar. That's who taught me how to play guitar. And then I went to classical guitar where I was playing a nylon string guitar, even farther away from rock and roll. And then after that, then it was nothing but power chords and turning the amp up as loud as it could go. But bass and guitar, I just figured out myself. Even when we were like kids, anytime Tony Lippy of like I'm and Boredom, we had a practice space in his parents' sunroom, which we called the Florida room, or they called it the Florida room, and we just continued to call it the Florida room. I would get behind the drum kit as much as possible because it fascinated me. But I think I already had the mechanisms figured out in my head. Like it wasn't foreign to me. I just really, really wanted to make it a reality. Like you'd watch videos and see the drummers, their hands cross. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you cross? Like seems like it would get in the way. Like, but I was already working it out in my head and kind of like, okay, no, I kind of understand it. So yeah, I took every opportunity to like play anybody's guitar or bass or drums. I was always fascinated with how those things worked.
But you mentioned Bob Patterson or a little bit ago. There's also a festival that goes on up in the St. Augustine area called the Gamble Rogers Festival. Did you ever get a chance to go to that before?
Yeah, I've been going. So Gamble was one of Bob's best friends, and I was lucky enough to know him and play music with him and be around him a lot when I was a kid. And so before it was the Gamble Rogers Folk Festival, it was called the St. Augustine Folk Festival. And I used to go when I was a kid. And Bob would take me and, I'd sit around and play some 12 bar blues or whatever it was he was teaching me at the time with, like some of it is like, like a kid's workshop sort of thing. And, but then once Gamble passed away and they run the full festival in tribute to him, changed the name. At the time I was playing in like folk style bands. And I got to play it. I got to play quite a few years of it. And I was also the stage manager for the main stage one year. Then there was a good amount of years that I was a pretty big part of that. Not huge in any sort of way, but it was nice to be around it for sure.
Yeah, there was a band of yours you were in, which kind of had a more folk sound to it, the Wobbley Toms.
Yeah, yeah. The Toms were another one of those unexpected like door openings for me into another realm of music making that I wasn't looking for. It just kind of happened. They were the strangest fucking band I've ever seen. There were like 9 to 11 people up on stage when this is when I first saw them, and there was a dude who played pots and pans. There was a dude with a tin whistle. There's a guy with bagpipes. But the core group of the band was a really solid bluegrass band, right? Banjo, acoustic guitar, mandolin, bass. And I got asked to fill in on drums uh, for them at one point. I played with them for like 6 months, and it was just wild, super fun. They were like they were all absolute madmen and had a blast. It wasn't really about musicianship. It was just kind of being crazy. But every once in a while, there were these really brilliant musical moments, and like me, the musical overthinker was like, if I could just calm these motherfuckers down, this could be there's something here. So, anyways, so when their drummer came back, they were like, "Hey, we really like playing with you. You should stick around in the band." But literally, there's 9 people in the band, and I'm like, "You got all the bases covered. I don't have another instrument to play. I don't have it." And they're like, "Yeah, but we have this accordion." They held up this like shitty student accordion. It was like hanging by a thread, straps broken, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So I took it home. I learned how the accordion worked. I figured I could completely ignore the button chord part and just play melodies on the keyboard. And I played accordion in a fucking band for 2 years. And it was super fun. And at that point, the membership started changing. We started making it more. There was like we're playing like pub rock. Like, so we'd play some bluegrass, we'd play some like traditional Irish things, but then we'd play like Bauhaus and the Pixies and um, a very weird band, like a very very weird mix of music. But they were playing 3 hour long sets a night because they weren't like a band you'd go see. They were just the band playing at the bar that night, and getting to play with them and play that much music was totally brand new to me. I was used to 20-minute sets. I was playing, like my world. That was 8 songs, and you're done. This is like we're playing like 3 sets of 12 songs, and it was the first band that like I ever played a note of music inebriated. Like before that, I was completely sober, especially for every performance I'd ever done. It was like I had to learn how to play completely wasted, but it fit the whole vibe of the thing. Um, but anyways, I ended up moving into guitar, and at that time there were 3 lead singers. They kind of welcomed me as a fourth, and so I started introducing some songs. Um, and yeah, and then it sort of morphed into this like pretty straight bluegrass band, like a bluegrass band with a drummer. Bass player switched to like a full acoustic double bass. Um, yeah, and I think there are some really great songs. I'm like I look back on those shows in that band with like nothing but like it was just an absolute blast of a time. Um, just took something completely different, like
Right.
I had to learn how to I had to figure out what bluegrass was because I didn't know the difference between it and country music.
The You mentioned with the Wobbly Toms, getting involved in vocals.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the first time that you really got more involved on the vocal side, or were you already kind of in the mix of adding your own vocals to some of the bands you were with before that?
I mean, I did the the pretty standard, oohs and ahs in I'm and Boredom. Oohs and ahs, you just like ripping, basically like, oh, Bad Religion did that, like, ooh, like thing, trying to do that. Then I played in a band in Gainesville. The band that it really didn't work was called Mike's Brothers Band, and I sang in that band, and that was the first time. But I wasn't comfortable. I didn't enjoy it, and it didn't really go over well at all. With the Toms, I found that writing in and for like a folky sort of song structure, or like a bluegrass song structure, which is like, bluegrass is completely rigid, right? They're just parts. And I mean, it doesn't have to be, but like the bluegrass that we were playing was really rigid in its form. I found it a whole lot easier to write for those sorts of songs. And then I found that I have a little bit of like a Southern accent, in me somewhere. And if I use it on those types of songs, in my opinion, it's the way my voice sounds the best. Like, I don't have a cool like punk rock voice. I don't have a great singing voice at all. But like, if there's like a bunch of strings happening and like I do like a little twang thing with my voice, that it's not natural. I'm from fucking Pennsylvania, but like, it's in there somewhere. And when I hear it, that's the only way I like to hear my voice, like recorded or like seeing me play live, is if there's, and that came from that band. That came from that era of like, and because I wouldn't have done that in like a rock band. I wouldn't have like thought to make my voice sound like that, unless I was playing these like, playing Pig in a Pen or some other like, bluegrass traditional thing.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I'm super thankful that it came out like that, because I do now know where my voice sits, and it's usually has nothing to do with like rock and roll or punk rock or anything, but you can't win them all. You can't win
Right.
them all.
No, but I was interested to know more about that, because it had to have really that had to have come from somewhere, and the fact that that's kind of where you kind of were able to start finding your voice, and kind of where that kind of lied with the Wobbley Toms. And then what was the first other band after that where you were contributing more of your vocals to?
Let's see. I guess it would have been Curious Markings.
Oh, Harry's Markings.
Yeah. So that started with Jacob and I, Jacob Hamilton, and I, finding ourselves both playing bass in a band, and both playing and also playing drums in a band, but being guitar players and singers, like being people who like sit down almost daily with their acoustic guitar at home and like write and play and sing. But we were rhythm section people, and like, it had been years since either of us had been like front people, or like been the people who brought or who were like writing and like presenting songs to bands. So that became Curious Markings. I was still finding my way in that band on how to sing. Like, and I still am. It's still a challenge. It's not natural for me. But I'm still learning, for sure. Like, literally, I demoed a track yesterday, and I tried a new vocal approach, and I think it worked. I haven't heard back from anybody in the band yet, so unsure if they think it worked, but it's basically, you just have to try stuff. If you don't
What band
try,
is this?
so
Terror
it's a
Management?
terror management band.
Yeah.
So that, our record just came out, but we recorded it 2.5 years ago. We already have like the second record and part of the third record already written. So we've been arranging and talking about the recording process for the second one. And Mike is the singer in that band, but like Kevin sang a song on the last record. I sang 2 songs on the last record. This one, we're going to do the same thing. Kevin's going to sing a song. I'm going to sing a song. Alan is going to sing a song. And then Mike will sing the rest. And I got basically handed this song that had just been an instrumental. And just put it in the computer, kind of wrote down some stuff and went for it. And I, I'm not going to say who I aped, but I just fucking ripped off another vocalist and their whole style. But the band's not active. They haven't been for over 10 years. And I don't think anybody cares. But I think it worked. But it wasn't something I'd ever done with my voice before.
Yeah.
You gotta try.
Who were some of the influences of Terror Management Band when you guys were kind of putting that band together?
That band started with Mike and Kevin. Mike Taylor, who is in Flaws and Halo Perfecto and Palaka. Kevin Kelly, who was in Liquid Limbs, the mighty Liquid Limbs, and the Eastern Wave with me. They started, I think they were playing together for a couple years, just getting together once a week, sometimes playing guitar, sometimes switching off instruments or whatever. And then I don't remember who reached out, but one of them asked if I would like come over and jam. I did, and basically Mike was like, "I'm gonna play guitar, so you and Kevin figure out who's gonna play the other thing." And Kevin had just bought this massive John Bonham Ludwig drum kit, and his reach is a good like 2 foot longer than mine, and so it's just massive. It's just like the cymbals are huge and they're really far apart. And I sat behind the drums and I was like, I'm playing bass. So it was very, very noisy. It was very like AMREP, like, late 80s Chicago stuff. Like it was very dirty, some Melvins in there, some Jesus Lizard, like just really like really angry, angular shit. And it was awesome. And so, we played for a little while as a 3-piece, recorded the record as a 3-piece. Then the pandemic hit and we shut everything down. And as soon as we got back to the practice space, we realized that we could use another thing, another instrument. And we called Alan. Alan and I had a history of playing music together. And he was also playing in a band called Burl from St. Augustine, which was just a really great like post-hardcore band. Dave Lowther played drums, just a fucking monster. Great band. Anyways, Alan joined and added something really special. And so we were like, well, let's go back and put Alan on the record. So Alan, we went back to Black Bear, the studio we recorded at. Alan played on top of everything else, and it's seamless. You'd never know that like his parts are recorded like a year after ours. And so so now with Alan's joining the band, and the band sort of being around, having been around for a couple of years, it's gotten a little not mellower, but like we have instrumental tunes now. Like it's a little more pastoral. There's like a lot of guitar effects and sound, like wall of sound sorts of things happening. And there is a Chicago sort of post-rock thing happening sometimes, but there's also like, there's a tune that's just a Hot Snake song, like we kind of just do whatever we want. And because it's the 4 of us doing it, we just are like, oh yeah, it's just one band, or just trust us.
With you having played a lot of shows with all different bands all over Florida, besides North Florida, what's been one of your favorite other cities to play in Florida, and why that city?
I've had really fun shows in Tampa. Tampa's always been, I've always had friends that are actively playing music there. So that's always been fun. I feel really, really lucky over the last decade with the bands that have been been active that Gainesville, while maybe part of North Florida, is more like Central Florida in my mind for some reason. But anyways, like Gainesville's been very like welcoming to my projects, and really over the last 10 years, there's been some tours. I played a little bit of everywhere, but like most of the time, if we get over to Gainesville for a weekend, like success, like play the backyard, see some buddies, hit the record store. That's all I'm looking for. But yeah, I mean, even I guess probably starting with like with Deadaires and everything beyond that, like Gainesville is just like they've shown up. They have cared enough to come out and see what me and the rest of these St. Augustine weirdos are up to. It's a nice relationship for sure, and we try to obviously like reciprocate. So when they come to town, we're there.
I think you had told me before we did the interview that you had played. There was one tour where you pretty much just focused on Florida. You played every city you possibly could, with the exception of maybe Key West. You played pretty much everywhere. So what band was that with? And any real memorable moments from some other locations that you haven't mentioned from in Florida?
Let's see. So that was Curious Markings. That was the Start with the Party tour. It was 10 or 11 shows all in Florida, like in 10 or 11 days. So yeah, we played a really fun show in I think it was Fort Lauderdale. I could be wrong, at Banana Records. Are you familiar?
No, I thought Banana Records was in Clearwater. Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly where it was, but we played there with a band called Rudderkin from the Tampa area. That was when we first met those guys, and Dave and those boys have become really pretty good buds since then. So that was a really fun show. That's a great record store as well. Yeah, I think Broken Things played that show as well. That was fun. We played in Miami on Super Bowl weekend, when the Super Bowl was in Miami, and we didn't know it. We were like, man, Miami's fucking packed. This place is just like insanely packed. And then we realized hours later, so everybody just wears sports jerseys down here? And then somebody like just looked at their phone and was like, oh yeah, the Super Bowl's tomorrow, like right over there.
What venue was that at? Do you remember where that was?
That's the legendary Miami venue called Churchill's. Yes. Churchill's. That sounds right.
I'm sure Churchill's, right. Yes. Yeah, Churchill's, sure.
Yeah, it wasn't the most awesome show, but it was great. It was great to play there.
Is that the first time you played Churchill's?
For me, yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was my first time there. And then yeah, on that show, we played a really fun show in Daytona Beach at a little hole in the wall pub called Tiernanog. That was cool. Yeah, where else did we play? We played in Gainesville at the Backyard. Played in Jacksonville at the Winterland Festival.
Did you get up to the Panhandle, to like Pensacola, Panama City?
Not on that tour, no. I think Jacksonville was the farthest north we got, and we didn't go up. Yeah, we didn't do Tallahassee on that tour.
Okay, Tallahassee too, yeah, of course.
Yeah, fun shows. The Winterland Festival was fun. And yeah, and then I think we played. Oh, when we came back, like the last show of that tour was at Sarbez, which is is now not booking live music, but at that point was here in St. Augustine. And we played with Zeta, who are now just kind of like blown up, and to see them like rise like over the last couple of years to where they are now, the shows that they're playing and stuff. Also, they're one of the more incredible live acts I think that's doing it right now. But yeah, blown away by them on our tiny little like grilled cheese restaurant stage. That was the end of tour. So that was really fun.
With the Deadaires, where'd you go? Where'd you travel to?
We did. Well, let's see. Where did we do? So we did the Midwest, um, which was the first time I ever flew out somewhere to tour. We did the Midwest with Off With Their Heads, and then we did the upper East Coast, like Richmond, Philly, Brooklyn, Boston. And then at one point we did like a Southeast thing, like some Florida shows in Charleston. It was only 3 times we went out, I think.
Was that the most you've gone out with a band and played that many dates with outside of Florida?
No, Boredom went out and did quite a bit more than that back in the day, and so did the band My Captain, that was directly after Boredom. We toured a lot, but that was like in 2002, 2003. That was the most I ever toured. But yeah, Deadaires was nice. It was pretty strategic, as we all had children, and like 3 of the 4 of us worked at the same music venue, so we had to kind of book those tours around the shows that we were working. So yeah, we couldn't do a lot, but we did as much as we could, I guess, at the time.
On all those dates you played with the Deadaires, and this is like almost like the second part of your life, right? I mean, you were a lot younger back then when you were doing touring, and now you're older, right? And you're touring all these places.
Yeah, like
was there
early 40s?
Yeah. So was there some location you were just really glad you finally had the chance to go to that you didn't ever get to go to when you were younger?
I think Chattanooga, when we played Chattanooga, which must have been on the same leg as like the Charleston shows. I had never, I had played Sluggos in Pensacola back in the day. I had never played the Sluggos North in Chattanooga. That was the first time that I'd played there. So that was really great. I'm a huge fan of the Chattanooga music scene and community. There's been a lot of like back and forth between them and St. Augustine. Like people move there from St. Augustine, people from there move here. But also, that said, like Hidden Spots, Future Virgins, incredible bands from that area, and it was really fun to play at their local spot, which also has killer food too.
And that's important because
it is. Man.
It's very important, especially when you're traveling. You know, you have to make time to get good food, especially local stuff, right? Not stay away from the chain restaurants.
Yeah, well, there's no shame if you're an Arby's fan. Do your thing. Horsey sauce. I'm right there with you. In spirit, I'm not going to be there with you in the actual restaurant. But no, on tour, there is so much time. You have so much time. It's literally hurry up and wait.
Sure.
And then you play music for 30 minutes, and then you're just sweaty for the rest of the night. That's it. That's touring. So like, yeah, man, if you're a record collector, then you go find the record shop. If you are a foodie, you figure out what restaurant's cool. Like, there's plenty of stuff to do.
Or
just don't skateboard.
Or what you do, right? Don't skateboard. Or what you do is you go to the record shop and you ask the record shop clerk where the best food is to go eat, and they will tell you. They will. Record store workers are some of the best tour guides you'll ever find. They know where everything is, especially the best food.
I love a good record store clerk. the more jaded, the better.
Yes. And speaking of record stores, you have a great shop where you are. Tone Vendor is in St. Augustine,
yes.
And you had, I'm sure, growing up in that area and have experienced other shops along the way. So talk about that for a moment. What have been some of your favorite record shops and any in stores you've ever done playing in a record store before or a music store in general?
Yeah. So Fuse Records was here in St. Augustine in the mid 90s. Totally life-changing for a lot of us. a lot of great shows. Like Palaka played there, Hope Springs Eternal, Moonraker, Asphalt Parade, like a lot of bands in this like the Florida scene. Got some shows there. It was great. Boredom and I played there as well. We're lucky to have Tone Vendor here in town. Dan Sostrom runs it. He's a good buddy of mine. And he runs a tight ship. It's a great shop. In Jacksonville, there's Tiger Records with a sister store in Gainesville called Sunshine. Both have an insane amount of good used stuff. James and Daniel both are mega collectors where they're constantly buying collections. And they have the goods, man. They do. I spend way too much money at both those shops, and I don't even live in either of those towns. But yes, they're great. In stores, the one that comes to mind is Deadaires played at Seasick Records in somewhere in Alabama. I'm gonna say Birmingham. I'm gonna say Birmingham, Alabama. It might not be Birmingham.
I think it might be. I heard of Seasick before.
So at that time, my bandmate Andrew, his brother worked there, or maybe was a part owner of it. He was involved in some way. They had a stage. We played it. It was a really good time. We then went back to his place to stay the night, and I stayed down in his basement in front of his record collection, which was like one of the best record collections I'd ever seen. It was ridiculous. Not just the amount, but just like he had the goods. He had the goods.
Does it matter to you that the music that you make gets released in a physical format, considering that you're a fan of it as well?
Yeah, I love it. I do. I love it. There's a part of me that just doesn't want to do it anymore because it's a hassle and it's really expensive and it takes forever. But I fucking love it. I love when the Terror Management Band record came out, literally I was at the merch table stuffing records into sleeves because everything was coming from different directions and ended up meeting at the show. That was like I was like the best day I'd had in weeks, sitting in a dive bar, stuffing your own record into your own record sleeve, which is like beautiful because they're like it has one of Mike's paintings on the cover and on the back. Like it was just like I was in heaven. Like that is nothing better than stuffing your own record. But it took like a year and a half to get that record pressed. Like it's painful. It's a painful amount of time for someone who and we as a band have like a lot of creative creative energy. We're always writing, and so like I think we had half of a new record written before we even recorded the first one, and that was a year and a half ago. Like it's a lot. So sometimes I'm like, yeah, we should just release it to Spotify and like be done with it. It exists, people could grab it, whatever. But like there's something about a physical product. Nowadays, I personally think about them more as artifacts. Like if you have something on your merch table and somebody comes over, regardless of whether they have a record player or a cassette player or something, if they want to support the band and they want to just throw you $20, then they get to pick something off the table. Like that's kind of how I think about it. Like here's this LP. I really hope it ends up on a turntable someday. Like if it doesn't, it'll collect dust on a bookshelf somewhere, and then maybe somewhere down the line somebody will listen to it. But it's if they're willing to support the band at a show situation like that, I'm happy to make stuff. It's fun.
Yeah. And it is nice when you get a chance to get a physical copy of something, whether it be a tape or a vinyl record. And I was really glad when the discography came out for Minimum Rage because
that was exciting.
It had all the songs on it, and I think it's all the songs. Unless there's anything else that's out there that wasn't included on it. But
there are two songs that are live. There are two live songs,
two live ones
that are the only thing. The only thing that we've released that wasn't, like a studio recording. And yeah, so that's all of it. That's like 3 recording sessions like the full length and then 2 EPs. Yeah, Drew did a great job wrangling that together. Yeah, happy to because we never released anything.
Right, never.
It went like, Bandcamp. I think like it ended up on like the streaming services at some point, but it was not. We were always just a little too scattered to like really make it happen. And then when it was suggested maybe a discography, I was like, I don't know, can we fit that many songs on an LP? And Drew said yes, and I was like, okay, go for it, let's do it.
And you did, and that's what happened. So,
Made it happen.
what do you like about the live shows with Minimum Rage?
What I like is I like John Blackford, our singer, is one of the like funniest, most insane people I've ever met. Smartest, kindest. He was everybody in the band's teacher at one point. And he got like, he's the reason that Jacob's into punk rock, like hipped him to like, I think a Subhumans cassette when he was like, Jacob's like sitting in his class one day. He's unhinged. He goes off on these like political rants in between songs. And sometimes we're trying to reel him in, like start the feedback up, but no, he just keeps going. And like, the more he starts on a spiel in between songs, and the more at first I'm annoyed because I'm like, yeah, let's play another song. And then it keeps going and keeps going. And like the more he goes, I just think it's hilarious. It's so much fun. Most of the time he's preaching to the choir, right? Like we're playing punk shows, like punks are pretty on it about their political views, right? But he's just like, he's on this fucking soapbox just doing his thing. But he believes it and he lives it. And he's often shirtless and just like moshing by himself. It's great. I just like watching the band because I feel like almost like a bystander, because like Jacob's like, you can't see his face, it's just hair, and then Cole, it's just hair, and then John is moshing shirtless, and I'm just like, this is hilarious, this is so awesome. And I think the band kind of rules. Like Cole writes really great songs for us. We all have been playing together for so long that it's a joy to play. Yeah, I can't wait to play. We got 3 shows coming up.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask about what's coming up next for Minimum Rage and what you got going on with that.
Yeah, we have let's see, we're playing Monufest. I guess that would be the 3rd weekend in October. And then we're playing a pre-fest show in St. Augustine at Nobby's on the Wednesday before Fest. And then we play Fest 13, 23, I don't know, whatever number it is, that Fest this year. 18, I have honestly no idea. But thanks to Tony and that whole crew, they continue to invite us back every year. So we're playing Sunday at Fest at Vecinos, which for the old heads, Dirty Nellies.
Is that the only band you're playing with for Fest?
Correct. Yeah.
And Monufest, you're playing with Harsh Bangs and Minimum Rage.
And Minimum Rage, yeah. Yeah. So I got double duty that day. But yeah, super fun. Fun fact. Minimum Rage first show was Fest 7 years ago.
I was gonna say, which one, Jeremy?
I can't remember, but it was so we Jacob and John and I had a different band called Brown Palace, and we were booked onto Fest, and that band broke up, and then in between that band breaking up and Fest, we formed Minimum Rage, and so we were like, hey, can our new band play? And they're like, yeah, sure. So that is how like Silver Spoon punks we are. Like our first show was Fest. Like that's how lucky we are. Super grateful for that kind of shit. Also gotta give a shout out to Rich Diem, my bandmate in Telepathic Lines. He came up with the band name Minimum Rage and was like, "There's got to be a band called Minimum Rage," and we were like, "Okay, let's do it. You should be in it." And he's like, "Nah," but he named the band, so
Yeah.
gotta give him credit. Thank you,
There
Rich.
there was a band from Florida called the Minimum Wage, I think.
Probably, yeah,
Yeah, there
definitely.
definitely was a band. I think they put out like 1 7 inch. I can't
It's
remember.
it's a good punk rock band name.
Yeah,
It's not ultra clever, like you have no like but it works.
yeah.
It's a good one, yeah, for sure.
Out of all the bands you played with and all the different styles of music, if you had to pick one or two that you really can just sit down and you really just can listen to this, and it's something you're super proud that you made. Is there one or two bands or specific albums or recordings that really stand out for you personally?
Well, it's always the new stuff, right? Like the Terror Management Band record. Like I said, I've said multiple times, I guess. Sorry for sounding like a broken record. It just came out. LP on Belladonna Records, cassette on Bakery Outlet, uh, streaming through Ashtray Monument. But it's called Big Box Apocalypsis. And I think it's the most accomplished thing that I've done in a long time that I've been a part of. I am constantly in awe of the things that like I get to make with those guys. Kevin, Alan, and Mike are just like these genius dark wizards on their instruments, and I just get to just kind of float along with them and try to keep up. So yeah, I think that record's great. I'm really happy with it. Uh, it bears mentioning that Alan mastered it, and I think he did a beautiful job. But yeah, that one is great, and that's all on. I think the streaming went live for that record on the 21st. So yeah, so it's available everywhere you want it to be. Um, Other than that, I mean, the only thing that we haven't really touched on, but I'm pretty proud of, is the Onslaught Dynamo record. Um,
I'm glad
I
you
like,
brought that one up because
yeah,
I like that one a lot too.
I like that. So that more than anything, I like the songs. I really Bo Dillard is a dear friend of mine, and we just have a very similar taste in music, and we just like that sort of Sam I Am Jawbreaker mid tempo punk rock thing. I love his voice. He likes my guitar playing, and it just worked. But that record, more than anything, I'm proud of the fact that I recorded that. I recorded that the whole thing in my garage.
As we kind of round things out, a couple of quick last questions I have for you, Jeremy.
Yeah, man.
Having played all the shows that you've played over the years, and obviously more to come, but based on the ones you've already played, what's been the worst pit you've seen?
The worst pit. Probably any show that I'm played in when I was in high school, and there was like a pit, but we were all like children from the suburbs who didn't know what a pit was. So it was just like that push mosh thing that like, and I just never understood it. I was like, it always did. I never wanted a pit because I really wanted people just to enjoy the music, right? Like it's not my thing. So yeah, all of the push mosh pits in 1993 at the Lions Club show that the skinheads stole the cash box. That is the worst pit. Those were the worst pits I've ever seen.
Yes. And if there was one place, one venue, one club, one hole in the wall, wherever it was, if there's one place that doesn't exist anymore that you would like to play one more show at or see one more show at in Florida, what place would that be?
Well, it'd be Fuse Records or the Hardback. Um, Fuse Records that's just where it started for me. The Hardback, just legendary. Um, and also when Drew and Matt were running it, they were ultra kind to my shitty band, and I would love to play that corner of the room again. It'd be fun.
It's been great having you on, and thanks so much for all the time you've taken to tell your story and to share a lot of the experiences and the bands you've been in over the years. I know there's probably about another 50 we didn't get into, but
It's okay. That's okay.
we
That's all right.
covered a lot of them.
We did. Jeff, thank you for having me. It's an honor. Like, I don't understand how I've played music for this long, and it's even a little crazier that there are people who might want to hear me talk about it. So thank you. And thanks to everybody out there, all the buds and all the new buds that I haven't made yet.